Think about how you find one word in a dictionary. You don't start at A and read every page. You open to the middle, decide which half it's in, and throw the other half away. Then again, and again, until you're standing right on top of it. Now, what if you read an unfamiliar code base the same way? That's the whole idea behind understanding the right chunks. And it turns, I have no clue where to start, into about 4 good questions. I'm John. This is The Thinking Engineer, one channel with a simple thesis. AI can write the code now, but somebody still has to understand it. That somebody is the job that isn't going away. In episode 1, we watched a developer who shipped code he couldn't explain. Episode 2 was the uncomfortable version of why the tool doesn't fix that on its own. This episode is the constructive answer, and it won't be a comforting one. By the end of this, you'll have a method for getting your arms around code you didn't write, without pretending you need to hold 200,000 lines in your head at once. And before we get into it, I read every comment, and I want the war story on this one specifically. The worst code base you've ever been dropped into with no map. Tell me how you found your footing. I'll be down there. Let me start with the advice, because I've both received it and given it, and I think we owe each other some honesty here. Read the whole code base before you touch anything is terrible advice. I understand the spirit of it. You're trying to prevent someone from blundering into a critical path without any context, and that is a legitimate concern. But the instruction itself, taken literally, leads straight to overwhelm. And overwhelm leads to picking a random file and starting from there anyway, except now with more anxiety. There are code bases I've worked in that were north of 2 million lines of code. If I tried to read them front to back before touching anything, I would still be reading. The problem with the advice isn't the goal. Understanding is the goal, and it's the right goal. The problem is the method. Read everything is not a method. It's a gesture. And what it produces is the kind of shallow familiarity where you've seen most of the files, but you couldn't explain what any module actually does. That's not understanding. That's just having scrolled. The method itself is the dictionary trick, applied directly. Instead of reading everything, you ask one question first. What is the behavior I need to understand? And then you find where that behavior enters the system. That's your first bisection. You're reading the path from a thing happened to the thing that handles it, not the whole code base. Everything off that path doesn't exist for now. You're not ignoring it forever. You're throwing the other half of the dictionary away until you've found your word. Most of the time, you can find the entry point in a few minutes. HTTP endpoints have routes. Queue consumers have message types. Scheduled jobs have names. Once you have the entry point, you follow the behavior. You stop when you hit something you can't trace. You ask why that thing exists. You stop again. You're narrowing the codebase, one bisection at a time, until you land on the module that owns the thing you need. What you're looking for at the end of that narrowing is the seam, the natural boundary where one thing ends and another begins. A well-built system has these. They're the places you can follow a behavior all the way through one module and come out the other side knowing exactly what that module's job is and where its responsibility stops. A poorly built system, the behavior keeps going. There's no seam. You follow it through one file and it reaches into 5 others with no clear handoff. That's a different problem, and it's a real one, but even then, the binary search still works. You keep narrowing until you find the smallest piece you can hold in your head. You start there, you expand from there. This idea gets misread easily, so let me protect one line. Finding the right chunk and ignoring the rest is not the same as saying it's okay to ship code you don't understand. Episode 1 was about developers who built things they couldn't explain. What I'm describing here is how you get to the point where you can explain something. You own one thing completely and work outward. You don't read everything first. Every good senior developer I've worked with does this instinctively. They don't read the whole repo on day one. They find the seam that matters for what they're doing. They own it cold, and they expand their map from there. That's not laziness, that's how working memory actually operates. You can hold one thing deeply or 10 things shallowly. The 10 things feel like coverage, the one thing actually makes you useful. I'll give you the specific scar because this isn't theoretical. I got dropped into an existing project once. No documentation worth reading. The kind of Git history where every commit message was fix or update or final, then final 2. Ticket was due Friday, and by the first few hours I did exactly what most people do. I opened the file tree and just started reading. By hour 3, I had a dozen tabs open and I understood nothing I hadn't understood when I started. I'd seen files, I hadn't learned anything. What turned it around was a question so obvious it hurt to admit I'd avoided it. What does this ticket actually touch? Just that. So I found the entry point, an HTTP endpoint, which is at least a known shape, and I followed it. I stopped when I hit something I couldn't trace. I asked why that thing existed, and I stopped again. In about 40 minutes, I had a solid mental model of one module and one clear flow through it. I knew what was supposed to change and what should stay the same. That was enough to start. It was enough to finish. The rest of the codebase didn't reveal itself in those 40 minutes, but the part I needed was there, and I understood it. The dictionary doesn't care how many pages it has. You find your word the same way regardless. So let me give it to you clean, because it should be portable. 4 questions. You can write them on an index card. 1. What is the behavior I'm trying to understand? The actual thing that happens in the system, not the feature name or the ticket title. A user cancels an order before it ships is a behavior. The cancellation flow is a category. Behaviors are specific enough to follow. 2. Where does it enter the system? An HTTP handler, a queue consumer, a scheduled job. There's a starting point. Find it. This is almost always fast. 3. What does it change? If behavior is state change, following what changes tells you what this code actually owns. The files that aren't changing are outside your chunk for now. And 4. What does it depend on to run? What it needs for this behavior specifically, not what it's coupled to in general. That's your context boundary. Everything inside that boundary is yours to understand. Everything outside is outside for a reason, even if that reason is just not today. That's it. 4 questions. 1 seam. And the patience to ignore everything that isn't the dictionary page you're standing on. One more thing before we get to the outro. Remember that scar I just told you about, the 40 minutes spent finding one HTTP endpoint in a codebase whose Git history read like a confession? There's a tool that would have cut that closer to 5. It's a Claude Code skill called Understand Anything, worth knowing about once you found the module you're actually trying to understand. You install it once through the plugin marketplace, then from inside the project you run /understand, scoped to the folder you care about. Under the hood, it runs a multi-agent pipeline. TreeSitter handles the structural layer, Claude handles the semantic layer, and together they build a knowledge graph of every file, function, class, and dependency in that scope. What you get is a dashboard you can explore. Click a node and see what it connects to. Read a plain English summary of what that file is for. Ask it a direct question. What calls into this aggregate? And it answers from the graph instead of rereading the source. There's a guided tour too, ordered by dependency so you can learn the module in the order that makes sense instead of whatever order the file tree happened to list it in. The piece I keep coming back to is the diff tool. Before you push, understand diff shows you what the graph says your change actually touches. That's a different question than what you think you're touching, and it's the kind of thing you want to know before the PR goes out, not after. It's free and it's MIT license. Links in the description. We'll keep covering tools like this on the channel, the ones that sharpen how you read and reason about code, instead of the ones that write more of it. I want something specific from you in the comments. What's the worst code base you've ever been dropped into with no map? No docs, no context, just a ticket, a deadline, and a file tree that went on forever. What did you do? How did you find your footing? I want the war stories. The honest ones are more useful to the person watching this 3 years from now than any advice I could write. If this one gave you something, if you're going to try the 4 questions next time you inherit someone else's code, hit like. It helps the right people find this channel. Subscribe and you'll be here for the next one, where we get into why AI is a code generator, not a coworker, and why that one distinction changes how you should hand it work. You don't have to understand everything. You have to understand the right thing. And you have to understand it cold. That's the job. I'll see you in the next one. Always think before you commit and push.